Okay, so we're about to dive into one of history's greatest puzzles. We're talking about a man who completely changed how we think, but left behind, well, nothing. No books, no letters, no easy answers. We are, of course, talking about the mystery of Socrates. Right, so who was this guy? He's a giant of philosophy, a founder of Western thought, Plato's teacher, a name pretty much everyone knows. But here's the thing, the huge problem. For a man this important, the actual historical record is a total mess. And that's because he never wrote anything down, not a single word. So everything we think we know about him comes from other people. His students, people who admired him, and yeah, even people who really, really didn't like him. This one fact turns everything into a fascinating historical detective story. This puzzle is so famous it even has its own name, the Socratic problem. This isn't just about writing a biography. It's like a 2,400-year-old cold case, and we have to sort through some very, very different witness statements. So to even begin to get to the bottom of this, we've got to look at the key witnesses. And each one of them paints a completely different picture of the exact same person. So let's meet our main sources. First up, you have Plato, his star student. Now for Plato, Socrates was a total hero, a brilliant, virtuous philosopher who was tragically killed for being so committed to the truth. Honestly, this is the version of Socrates that most of us picture in our heads. But then you have our second witness, Xenophon. He was a soldier, a man of action, and he saw Socrates through a totally different lens. His Socrates is tough. He's smart, he's patriotic, but he can also come off as a little smug, maybe a bit too pleased with himself. And then we have our third witness, the comedian Aristophanes. In his play, The Clouds, he just completely roasts Socrates. He paints him as this ridiculous fraud, an atheist literally hanging in a basket, teaching kids how to make a bad argument sound good. So, who are you going to believe? The loyal student, the practical soldier, or the funniest guy in Athens? What's just wild is that all three of these versions have survived for centuries. Was he a saint, a soldier, or a total sham? The real answer is probably somewhere in between all three. Okay, so despite these completely conflicting portraits, there are some things, some core details about the man himself and his, let's say, revolutionary ideas that most of our sources actually seem to agree on. Yeah, forget the idea of some frail scholar. Eyewitnesses all say Socrates was an incredibly tough dude, a decorated soldier who fought in major wars and famously walked barefoot on ice. He said he was guided by a daimonion, like a divine inner voice that would stop him from doing something wrong. And he broke all the rules by learning from women, all while refusing to ever take money for his teaching. At the very heart of his philosophy was this really profound idea, sometimes called Socratic ignorance. He believed that real wisdom doesn't come from pretending you have all the answers. No, it comes from admitting just how much you don't know. Acknowledging your own ignorance is the first, most crucial step to actually learning anything. So to show people their own ignorance, and himself too, he came up with this powerful, and probably kind of annoying, technique of just relentless questioning. See, the Socratic method isn't about winning a debate. It's about peeling back layers of bad assumptions to try and get closer to what's true, even if you never quite get there. And all this questioning led him to a conclusion that was, and still is, pretty radical, that evil is basically just a form of ignorance. He argued that no one knowingly chooses to do the wrong thing. If you really, truly understood what was good, you just do it. For Socrates, doing wrong isn't malice, it's just confusion. Now, as you can probably imagine, walking around Athens all day, publicly proving that the most powerful people in the city don't know what they're talking about, well, that's not a great way to make friends in high places. And eventually, it all led to the dramatic climax of his life. In the year 399 BC, when he was around 70 years old, Socrates was arrested and put on trial by the democracy of Athens. So what were the official charges? There were two big ones. First, impiety, which basically meant he wasn't respecting the city's gods. And second, and maybe the more dangerous charge, was corrupting the young men of Athens with all his strange ideas. The trial itself was this intense one-day showdown, and Socrates just refused to play along. Instead of begging for mercy, he literally used the Socratic method on his accusers. The jury found him guilty. When they asked him what his punishment should be, he refused to suggest exile and was sentenced to death. And he accepted it, calmly drinking the poison hemlock. It was during that trial that he supposedly delivered this iconic line. He was arguing that his life's mission, to constantly question beliefs, to examine his own values and everyone else's, wasn't just a hobby. For him, it was the very thing that makes life meaningful. To stop asking questions would be a fate way worse than death. So Socrates was executed by the very city he thought he was a gift to. But his death, that wasn't the end of his story, not by a long shot. In fact, you could say it's what cemented his place in history and created a legacy that is very much alive today. So, in the end, can we solve the Socratic problem? The honest answer is probably not. The man himself is kind of lost to time, forever seen through the eyes of other people. We'll likely never know for sure which portrait of him, if any, was the real one. But you know what? Maybe that doesn't even matter, because his real legacy was never a list of answers, but a way of asking questions. His method, through Plato, shaped all of Western philosophy. His ideas on virtue were picked up by the Stoics, his defiance inspired civil disobedience for centuries, and really every single time we use critical thinking, we're basically following in his footsteps. And so, Socrates doesn't really leave us with an answer. He leaves us with a challenge. He turned his method back on all of us. His life is this constant reminder to question our own beliefs, to examine our own lives, and to never, ever stop asking why.